Aid system in Gaza has now all but completely collapsed. A new survey of 43 international and Palestinian aid organizations working there has found that over 95% of them have had to suspend or dramatically cut aid since the ceasefire in the region ended. As a result, CEOs of 12 major aid organizations have come together to once again ask to be allowed to do their jobs. Let's bring in Georgia Tacey. She is the director for Gaza at Save the Children project. Georgia, it's good to talk to you. Thanks for coming on. And I mean, it's fair to say 95% of the aid organizations and the work you're able to do collapsing, it's hanging on by a thread, isn't it?
That's right. The resumption of hostilities is nothing short of a death sentence for children right now. The aid system is on the brink of collapse, and that's because it's been over 47 days since any commercial or humanitarian supplies have been permitted to enter Gaza. So that has led to a severe shortage of food, fuel, and critical medical supplies, which is also, along with other catastrophes, exacerbated the very significant cases of infant and maternal malnutrition.
I mean, you know, we rattle off these figures, Georgia, but I imagine that for those of us who have not worked for organizations like Save the Children project, we have very little idea of the real situation on the ground, where famine is now the reality day to day for those who have survived so far.
That's right. And on top of the aid blockade, there's widespread indiscriminate bombing and deliberate targeting of aid workers. And so for those of us that have limited stocks in our warehouse, we can't even safely distribute that aid right now, not only because we don't have enough fuel, but we don't have any guarantee that we can move safely to distribution sites without coming under attack ourselves.
Yeah, that was the next issue I was going to ask you about. How much movement are doctors able to even do at this stage?
Very, very limited. Well, they certainly can't do it safely. There's no guaranteed safety anymore. There's no humanitarian zone. I think you would have seen people being attacked in humanitarian zones, in hospitals. So there is no safe place. And so right now we are calling for an immediate and definitive ceasefire, as well as ensuring that all parties of the conflict uphold international law, which is about protecting civilians and protecting aid workers.
Georgia, if aid has been cut off since the blockade was imposed by Israel on the 2nd of March, that was weeks ago, what aid is still available in Gaza at the moment?
Seriously, very little. Each agency has different stock levels. Some agencies have enough food for their own staff for a week or 2 weeks, and same with the fuel supplies. But each day, agencies are rationing what they have, and the little bit that we have in our warehouses, we're finding it very difficult to distribute because of those safety reasons.
I understand that there have been incidents of cargo being struck outside Gaza as well. Thousands of pallets of aid supplies destroyed.
I mean, that's right. Save the Children alone has over 50 trucks waiting outside of the border to enter, full of shelter supplies, cooking supplies, medicine, food. We have them all ready to go. And right now, we just feel like we can't do our job because we've got both hands tied behind our backs.
Georgia, I understand there's a new proposal on the authorization mechanism for the delivery of aid to Gaza. What can you tell us about that?
Well, there has been a proposal put forward, but the international community rejects it largely because we can't have one party of the conflict overseeing the distribution of aid to another party of the conflict. Aid organisations like Save the Children, we know how to distribute aid safely and impartially and with neutrality, which is upholding humanitarian principles.
Right.
So largely the UN and the international community have rejected this proposal, which requires the Israeli authorities to oversee all the aid distributions and who that aid reaches. So we believe that we understand how to target the most vulnerable in a neutral and impartial way.
Absolutely. In fact, the UN Secretary General has described these new proposals by Israel as limiting aid down to the last calorie and grain of flour, because obviously this sets a precedent for future disasters, right?
That's right. And it's completely unacceptable. And certainly Save the Children will not be signing on to that agreement.
So in terms of how much time you have left as Save the Children, with the aid that you still have at your disposal, the people that you are still able to keep in Gaza, how much longer can you stay there if nothing changes immediately?
I'd say that we were able to stay in place for maybe 3 or 4 weeks, but that is without delivering aid at all. That is about just making sure our staff are safe enough and that we can keep operations being done remotely, but we would not be able to sustain this for longer than 3 or 4 weeks.
And you say you've got quite a lot of aid sitting outside the borders, just literally waiting for the word so you can get in.
That's right. And like many of us over the last year, we've had those stocks completely be destroyed in the weather, being left unattended and looted. And so it is really an unsafe place for all of us right now and unnecessary deaths. And we're really calling for those borders to be opened.
Georgia, how are women and children surviving day to day at the moment?
Barely. And I think no matter what you see in the media and in the news, please imagine that it's much worse. We have people who are fleeing for their lives. They often get 2 minutes notice that there might be an airstrike coming into their area. They have to pick up their children and run. The leading cause of death for children right now is blast injuries. Gaza now has the largest population of child amputees in the world. They're living in unsanitary conditions in tents where there's outbreaks of disease and bed lice. And there's just this enormous amount of grief and loss that children and their families are processing. Children reporting how they're hearing their friends crying underneath the rubble, friends that they were only playing with the day before, because of this indiscriminate bombing that we're seeing and attacking of civilians. So a month ago, we were talking about how to get children recovered in a couple of years. Now we're just concentrating on getting children and families through the day with enough food, water, and that their families stay intact every 24 hours.
The aid system in Gaza facing total collapse. It is and has been a disaster for some time now. Georgia Tacey, thanks for joining us. She's the director for Gaza at Save the Children. 12 major aid organizations making a simple and urgent plea to just be able to do their jobs in that war-torn country. We, months later, continue to track this story.